All right, let's dive right in. We're going to start with a story about a kingdom with a very, very strange rule.
So, picture this. You're made king. You get it all. Unlimited power, endless riches, the whole shebang. But there's a catch, a pretty big one. You only get the rule for 5 years. And what happens when that clock runs out? Well, it's pretty terrifying.
Yeah, they strip you of your crown, your fancy robes, everything. And then they send you off into this dense, deadly jungle, a place where no one, and I mean no one, ever comes back from. And for generations, this is just how it was. King after king, they all took the deal. They lived it up for their 5 years, pretending that inevitable end wasn't coming. And then, poof, they were marched off to their doom.
But then, one day, everything changes. A new king is chosen, and this guy, he's different. He sees that same 5-year clock ticking down, but instead of just burying his head in the sand with parties and luxury, he looks his future square in the eye and says, "Nope, I'm gonna do something about this."
And that right there is the huge difference, isn't it? The foolish kings, they were totally passive. They just let the future happen to them. But the wise king, he was an architect. He decided he was going to design his future. He knew he had a choice. And that really is the powerful idea we're going to unpack here. You have that same choice. Okay, so what does this wise king do first? What's his big move? And what's so fascinating is that it's not what you'd expect. He doesn't immediately send a bunch of workers into the jungle to start building. No. His very first move, it's all internal. It's a shift in his own mind, a fundamental change in how he sees himself.
He grabs onto this incredibly powerful idea. He realizes his current situation, it doesn't have to define his final destination. He completely shifts his identity. He's no longer a temporary king, just waiting for the end. He becomes the founder of a new beginning. And that belief, that simple internal change, is way, way more powerful than most of us give it credit for.
And listen, this isn't just some feel-good stuff from a fairy tale. This has a massive, real-world impact. I mean, get this. A huge 23-year study out of Yale found that people who had a positive view of their own aging lived, on average, 7.6 years longer than people with a negative view. Just let that sink in for a second. Your core beliefs about your future, they can literally add years to your life. That's insane.
You know, this is a perfect example of what we call the 3 layers of change. See, most of us get it completely backwards. We focus on the results, right? The outcomes we want. But the real engine, the thing that actually drives change, is deep down at the core, your identity. Who you believe you are is what drives your actions, and it's those actions that create your results. It all has to flow from the inside out.
All right, so once the king has that new identity locked in, his actions they naturally follow. He sends his people into that scary jungle, but here's the key. They're not there to build anything yet. First things first, they have to clear it out. They have to get rid of all the threats, all the poisonous plants. It's like weeding a garden before you can plant anything. He eliminated the negatives to make space for the positive, and that is exactly what we have to do with our own goals.
I'm about to tell you something that might blow your mind. For 500 years, 5 centuries, the word priority was always singular. It meant the single most important thing, just one. Then, around the 1900s, we started making it plural, priorities. And all of a sudden, we're supposed to have dozens of most important things. And what happens when everything is a priority? Well, nothing is.
So how do you get that focus back? Well, Warren Buffett has this absolutely brilliant exercise. He says, first, write down your top 25 goals, everything you want to do. Then, go through that list and circle just the 5 most important ones. But here, and this is the killer part, the other 20 on that list, they don't become your I'll get to it someday list. No, they become your avoid at all costs list. These are the good ideas that will distract you from your great ones.
It all sounds so simple, doesn't it? Just plan ahead. Focus on what really matters. But you know, as Voltaire once said, common sense is not so common. I mean, think back to our story. The foolish kings had the exact same amount of time, the same resources as the wise king. The only difference was how they chose to use them.
And this really gets us to the heart of it all. The wise king didn't just snap his fingers and build the city overnight, right? He didn't mess around for 4 years and then try some crazy last-ditch effort to save himself. His entire strategy, the whole thing, was built on small, consistent daily actions. Little things that over time compounded into something absolutely incredible. Because you see, every single habit you have, whether it's good or bad, runs on the same simple three-part loop. First, there's a reminder, or a cue, that kicks things off. Then there's the routine, which is the action itself. And finally, the reward, which is what tells your brain, hey, that was good, let's do that again. Now here's the problem. With bad habits, that reward is usually instant. But with good habits, the real payoff is often way, way down the road.
So what do you do about that? How do you stay motivated when the big reward is so far away? Well, there's a secret. You can actually hack this loop. You do it by attaching a new habit you want to build onto an old habit you already have. It's a really cool technique called habit stacking, and it's basically how you put your progress on autopilot. Here's a perfect real-world example. A friend of mine wanted to start meditating, but kept forgetting. But you know what they never forgot to do? Make coffee every morning. It was a rock-solid habit. So they stacked it. The reminder became hitting the start button on the coffee maker. The new routine was to meditate for the 4 minutes it took to brew. And the reward? That delicious cup of coffee they were about to have anyway. It's so simple, it's brilliant.
And that, right there, is the whole point. This is the 1% rule. It isn't about mustering up the energy for one massive, heroic, life-changing leap. It's about the small, sometimes even boring, discipline of getting just 1% better each day. It's about clearing one tiny patch of that jungle day in and day out until one day you look up and realize you're standing in the middle of a beautiful city that you built yourself.
So in the end, it all comes down to this simple question. The choice is yours. Are you going to be the king who just lives for today, accepting a future that someone else wrote for you? Or are you going to be the king who starts right now, today, designing the future that you actually want, the one you deserve? The question is, which king will you be?